June 1944. The German High Command is watching the English coast like a wolf watches a fence, eyes forward, breath held, waiting to see where the break comes. They know the Allies are coming. That part isn't secret anymore. By mid-1944, Hitler's entire war in the West is basically one looming question. Where do they land? Because that is the hinge. If the Allies manage to jam a full-scale invasion force into occupied Europe and hold that beachhead, Germany is now fighting a two-front war it cannot possibly win. If the Germans guess the right location and crush that landing on the beach, push it back into the sea, then maybe they hold on long enough to force terms, to buy time, to make it ugly. So for Hitler, for OKW, the German High Command, the question is not, are they coming? The question is, where? And on that question, the Allies decide to lie. Not in general, not in vibes. They are going to lie in steel, in paint, in radio waves, in forged paperwork, in human beings. They're going to build from scratch an army that does not exist. They're going to make that army move, speak, request fuel, demand spare parts, be seen, be overheard, be photographed from the air. They're going to give it a commander the Germans already fear, and they are going to park that phantom army in exactly the one place that will pull German focus away from the real invasion. This is the story of the 1st U.S. Army Group, FUSAG, an army that never truly existed and still bent the entire German defense posture at the moment the war was decided. You're about to watch one of the most ambitious magic tricks in military history. But to understand why it worked, we have to start with geography, ego, and fear. Let's talk about the map. If you pull up a map of northern France and look at the coastline along the English Channel, two areas jump out. 1. Normandy. Long beaches, cliffs hedges, farmers' fields. Historically not considered the most obvious invasion point because the approaches are tricky, tides are brutal, and it's farther from England than some other options. 2. The Pas de Calais, the narrowest point between England and France. Shortest crossing, direct shot across the channel, built-up ports, rail lines, flat open country beyond it, tank country. From a purely military logistics standpoint, Pas de Calais is the obvious choice. It's the of course they'll land here option, and the Germans believe that. In fact, they believe it so hard that they stack huge defensive resources there. Concrete bunkers, artillery, anti-tank positions, infantry divisions, fast reaction panzer reserves behind it. The Allies know this, and that is the key, because the real invasion, the real one, the one we now call D-Day, the landings on June 6, 1944, on the beaches named Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. That's not at Pas de Calais, that's Normandy. Normandy is the real point of impact. And that means in June 1944, before the first boat hits the sand, the Allies have a terrifying problem. They're landing in the less obvious spot, which means that even if the first wave gets ashore, even if the troops break through the beach defenses, even if they claw inland a few miles, if Germany reacts fast and moves divisions from Pas de Calais and throws a coordinated armored counterattack at Normandy immediately, they can smash that bridgehead before the Allies dig in. Allied planners know this, so they decide on something viciously simple. We don't just have to surprise the Germans on day 1. We have to keep lying to them on day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. Even after we've landed in Normandy, we have to convince German High Command, no, number, that's not the real invasion. That's a feint. The main blow is still coming. Do not move your best divisions. Hold them in Pas de Calais. Wait, wait, wait. Because every day German armor sits and waits up in Calais instead of driving south into Normandy is another day the Allies dig in. Another day they unload tanks. Another day they spread out, link up, and turn a beachhead that could be wiped out into a foothold that cannot be dislodged. That's the entire game. You're not just lying to get in the door. You're lying to keep the door open. So how do you do that? How do you lie at scale to an entire enemy intelligence ecosystem? You build an army. Let's meet it. 1st U.S. Army Group, FUSAG. On paper, this is huge. Hundreds of thousands of men, multiple divisions, armor, paratroopers, air support, logistics tail, field hospitals, supply depots. In reality, it's a mask, a layer cake of illusion, and it is stunningly aggressive. So here's what the Allies do, and step by step. Step 1. They give this fake army a real commander. Not just any commander, someone the Germans are obsessed with. They pick General George S. Patton, and that is not an accident. At this moment in the war, Patton is a blunt instrument carved into the shape of an ego. He's fast, he's violent, he's loud, he's aggressive, he's respected by his own troops, and he's feared by the Germans. The German High Command has studied Patton. They hate him. They also quietly admire him. To them, Patton is the exact kind of general who would lead a lightning cross-channel strike at the most obvious target, Pas de Calais. So the Allies take that German expectation and they weaponize it. They publicly attach Patton to 1st U.S. Army Group. They make it known, in ways they know German spies will hear, that Patton is out of favor, being held in England, planning something big. To Berlin, this fits perfectly. They assume Patton has been benched after an embarrassing incident and is now being saved for the real invasion. That's hook number 1. Step 2, they build the ghost, and I mean physically build it. Fields in southeast England, especially in Kent and Sussex, the part of England closest to the Pas de Calais crossing, begin to fill up with U.S. Army equipment. Look closer. That tank under the camo net, it's not steel, it's canvas, inflatable. That artillery battery lined up near a hedgerow, it's wood, painted pipes attached to wooden carriages. That airfield full of fighters and bombers? Some are real aircraft moved in for show. Some are just high-quality decoys, painted shapes, wooden silhouettes, canvas shells stretched over frame. There are fake fuel depots with fake fuel lines, fake supply dumps, complete with crates and 55-gallon drums that are empty. Fake landing craft, staged where German reconnaissance planes can spot them. On the ground, to someone walking past at night, it might look theatrical, even a little ridiculous. But from 20,000 feet up, through a camera lens in fast light with limited time to analyze, it looks like an army getting ready to cross the channel. That's not an accident. That's the point. Because the Germans are flying reconnaissance over Britain, not constantly, too dangerous, but they still get high-altitude overflights. They take photos, they study, they count shapes, they track buildup, and every time they look at southeast England, the message is, my God, look how much stuff is pointed at Pas de Calais. Step 3. They make that fake army talk. You cannot just park decoys and call it good. A real army is loud in invisible ways. It chats on radios, it files requests for spare parts, it coordinates supply runs, it runs training nets and command nets and logistics nets. It leaks. So the Allies simulate that too. They assign entire units of specially trained radio operators to sit in tents and basically role-play a fake army. This is not beep-boop random noise. This is disciplined radio theater. Different call signs for different phantom divisions. Traffic levels scaled to match the size of a corps. Logistics chatter about fuel, ammunition, rations. Encrypted bursts that German signals intelligence can intercept and analyze. Let me say that again. The Allies intentionally send out encrypted radio messages, knowing the Germans will break some of it, for the sole purpose of letting the Germans discover things that aren't real. That is next-level confidence, because here's how it hits Berlin. German analysts, sitting in their own rooms full of headphones and logs, hear consistent radio patterns that look exactly like a large U.S. force forming in southeast England, ready to punch across the channel at, Pas de Calais. And because those patterns exist day after day, not just a one-off, it feels to the German side like confirmation. This isn't a trick. We've tracked this formation for weeks. It's big. It's real. It's not real. It's theater. Step 4. They plant human proof. This is the part that feels like a spy novel, because Germany in 1944 still has informants, sympathizers, and agents in Britain. Not many. In MI5, British counterintelligence has rolled up, captured, or turned most of them. That part's wild, by the way. By this point in the war, almost every German spy in Britain is either under arrest or is secretly working for the British as a double agent. Read that again. The Germans think they've got eyes inside Britain, but those eyes are puppets. And now those puppets are going to start telling Berlin exactly what London wants Berlin to believe. These double agents send messages back to their German handlers, saying things like, "I saw armored divisions massing in Kent. I've observed special bridging equipment staged for a short crossing. I heard US officers discussing an assault into the Pas-de-Calais." None of it is real, but it feels real, because it's coming from sources the Germans have trusted for years. This is psychological warfare at the strategic level. You don't just give the enemy a lie, you let them convince themselves it's true. Step 5, they give the fake army a fake mission name, fake patches, fake paperwork. There are fake unit insignias, shoulder patches for divisions that don't exist. There are fake orders, fake movement timetables, fake planning documents, some of which are even carelessly lost in ways where German intelligence can pick them up. The point is to make FUSAG, Patton's First U.S. Army Group, feel bureaucratically real. Because the Germans know how Allied staff work. They've captured Allied paperwork before. They know what those reports, those maps, those memos look like. So the Allies duplicate that style, that boring tone, that format, and then they let some of it leak. The Germans eat it up. Because here's the thing, when the enemy hands you a perfect narrative that you already want to believe, you don't interrogate it. You hug it. And what do the Germans want to believe? They want to believe the real invasion is still coming at Pas-de-Calais. Because if Normandy somehow turns into a disaster for them, they can still say to Hitler, "Don't panic. This isn't the main landing. This is a diversion. We're holding the armor back for the real blow that is politically safer inside Nazi command culture than saying, we misread everything. We are in danger. Move everything right now." So even before the first Allied soldier steps onto a beach, Allied deception planners are already feeding the German general staff not just false data, but a false story that protects their pride. That's genius. That's cruel. And it works. Okay, let's move forward. It's now early June 1944, final hours before the invasion of Normandy. Right now, the real Allied invasion force, the one actually tasked with going to Normandy, landing under fire and clawing into France, is staging, loading, and about to launch. They are getting briefed. Men are staring at sand models of beaches they've never seen. Officers are talking about obstacles and firing arcs and minefields and you go here, you go there. If you get separated, look for this. The men are swallowing hard. Some are writing notes to wives or girlfriends and tucking them in their pockets. Some are pretending not to be afraid. And at that exact same moment, just across the channel in southeast England, an entire fake invasion force is also pretending to stage. Empty trucks move back and forth to create tire tracks that can be photographed. Decoy landing craft are positioned where German reconnaissance planes can discover them. Radio traffic ramps up. The fake army gets louder. So from Berlin's point of view, the picture is this. Yes, there are some Allied formations pointed at Normandy, but look at this. Look at how much is aimed at Pas-de-Calais. Look at Patton's supposed army. That must be the hammer blow. Normandy can't be the real thing. It's too small. Then June 6th happens. D-Day. The landings in Normandy are real, violent, and unbelievably costly. Let's be very clear about that. There is nothing fake about what happens when the ramps drop at Omaha Beach. There is nothing theatrical about men drowning under two heavy packs before they even clear waist-high water. There is nothing psychological about machine guns opening up on Higgins boats. It is meat and sand and blood and terror. But I want you to watch what happens at the German command level in those first 24 hours, because this is where the fake army earns its existence. Normandy is on fire. German coastal units are under brutal pressure. Reports are flying into higher headquarters. We're being overrun here. They've breached here. They're pouring men in armor here. We need reinforcements now. Under normal circumstances, what do? You counterattack. Immediately, you throw panzer divisions at that beachhead with orders to drive them into the sea before they can dig in. That's what German armored doctrine is built to do. Hit fast, hit hard, give them no time to stabilize. But that's not what happens. Why? Because Berlin thinks Normandy might be a feint. They think, because of the lie they've swallowed, that the real invasion is still coming at Pas-de-Calais, led by Patton's supposedly massive 1st U.S. Army Group. They tell themselves, don't commit everything yet. Don't move our best armored divisions south. Hold them in reserve up here, near Calais. Keep them in place in case Patton lands where we expect him to land. And that hesitation, that pause, is everything. Every hour those armored divisions sit and wait for the real invasion, Normandy grows stronger. The beachhead links together. Fresh troops pour in. Artillery gets emplaced. Tanks roll off landing craft. Within a day, within 2, within 3, what could have been a fragile, crushable Allied footprint turns into a solid Allied presence. And once that happens, you don't push them back into the sea. You've missed that window. It's done. That's the victory. That's the payoff for weeks and weeks of fake tents, fake tanks, fake radio chatter, fake patches, fake paperwork, and one loud, arrogant American general walking around England being visibly in command of an army that doesn't exist. I want you to understand something deep. The deception didn't just get the Allies ashore, it kept them alive once they were ashore. You are literally watching a magic trick save tens of thousands of lives. Now, let's rewind again, because I want to zoom in on one more layer of this deception, one more quiet weapon that made it possible. This one is human. It's the double agents. By 1944, British counterintelligence, or MI5, has spent years playing a ruthless game with German spies. When an Abwehr agent, German intelligence, parachutes into Britain or arrives by boat or makes contact, the British move fast. They arrest them, then they offer them a choice. Work for us, feeding Germany what we tell you to feed them, or you disappear. Most choose to work. Some choose to work and then become true believers because they decide the Nazis are monsters and they want them to lose. Others just want to stay alive. Doesn't matter why. What matters is the result. By the time of the D-Day deception, almost every German agent in Britain is, in reality, a British-controlled voice. So when Berlin receives reports like, I observed large-scale buildup in Kent. I overheard high-ranking Allied officers referring to Operation XYZ, a landing at Pas-de-Calais. I saw General Patton inspecting units near Dover. Those aren't lucky leaks. Those are planted truths of a lie. That alone would be powerful. But here's the real killer move. London doesn't just send good, juicy fake intel through these double agents. They also send boring, consistent, low-level, believable stuff for months. Supply levels, minor troop movements, equipment inventories, morale notes. Why does that matter? Because when you tell one lie, the key is to wrap it in 100 truths. If a spy sends back nothing but dramatic, plot-shattering revelations, Berlin gets suspicious. If a spy spends months reporting dull, accurate, verifiable, low-stakes info, the day that spy finally says, I've seen the invasion army and it's aimed at Pas-de-Calais, Berlin believes it. The British are basically building credibility accounts inside German intelligence. Deposits, 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 and then a single withdrawal that changes the war. That is not improvisation, that is patience. So even before the first Allied soldier touches Normandy sand, the German high command has been walked, step by step, into a mental prison. They believe what the Allies want them to believe. And on June 6th, when reality tries to kick the door open and yell, no, it's Normandy, it's happening right now. Send everything, the German high command answers. We can't. The real landing is coming somewhere else. That 3-second delay, that political instinct for self-protection, that unwillingness to admit we misread this in front of Hitler, that is where the lie finishes its job. Now, freeze here. The beaches in Normandy are chaos. American troops pinned at Omaha. British and Canadian sectors making mixed progress. Paratroopers behind the lines fighting in hedgerows and farm lanes in the dark, grabbing bridges, blowing causeways, getting shot out of trees, scattered alone, improvising. This is not neat. This landings movie everyone thinks would make a clean arc. Number. The only reason this chaos has a chance to survive and turn into a foothold is that no German armored division comes roaring in at full strength to kick it back into the water in those first critical hours. And no German armored division comes roaring in at full strength because they're still sitting in Pas-de-Calais, waiting for a ghost, waiting for Patton's fake army, waiting for an army that does not exist. That's the point where you can say, with a straight face, a fake formation, canvas tanks, wooden planes, radio lies, held real panzer divisions in place. That is the kind of sentence that would sound ridiculous in any other war. In this one, it's just true. And we are not even at the final twist yet, because the Allies don't stop lying after June 6th. They can't. They have to keep the illusion going for days, weeks. They keep FUSAG active. They keep the radio traffic up. They keep Patton's army talking about final prep for a main landing at Pas-de-Calais. Even after Allied troops are pushing inland from Normandy, even after town names in France are starting to fall, even after German frontline commanders are screaming into telephones, "Send us tanks or we're finished," the higher-level German command is still telling itself, "Hold, wait, the main blow is still coming at Calais. We cannot strip Calais." And that delay is fatal. By the time they finally admit to themselves, no, Normandy is the main invasion, it's too late. The Allies are dug in. They've brought armor ashore. They've opened a pipeline of men, supplies, artillery, fuel, food, ammunition, replacements. The beachhead has become a lodgment. The lodgment is becoming a front. And once you have a front in France in June 1944, the clock starts ticking down on Nazi Germany. Tick, tick, tick. That's what we're watching here. We're watching a lie turn into time. We're watching time turn into secure ground. We're watching secure ground turn into the beginning of the end for Hitler in the West. And we're going to walk into the middle of it up close in part 2. We're going to stand next to the inflatable tanks. We're going to sit in the fake radio tent and listen to a sergeant pretend to be 3 different battalion logistics officers in the same hour. We're going to look through the lens of a German reconnaissance camera at something made of canvas and plywood and feel how badly the German analyst wants to believe what he's seeing. We are going to watch hour by hour how a ghost army that never fired a shot saved tens of thousands of real lives that did. And for a little while, we're going to sit in that German headquarters and hear the conversation where someone says quietly, "My Führer, we believe the Normandy landings may be diversionary." That sentence right there is worth divisions. That sentence right there buys France back. That's next. Let's pick up right where we left off. It's the early morning of June 6, 1944. Normandy is burning. Men are dying in the surf. Landing craft are cracking open like eggshells. Paratroopers are hanging from trees or crouched in ditches, figuring out where the hell they even landed. Officers are trying to shout over artillery and can't even hear their own voices. That's the real invasion. But we're not starting there. We're starting 100 miles away in a quiet field in southeast England where almost nothing is real. It's cold, damp, very early. Pale light. You can hear gulls. And laid out in neat rows under camouflage netting is the 1st U.S. Army Group. Except, look closer. That Sherman tank under the net, it's canvas, inflatable. You can push it with 2 hands and it will wobble. That row of self-propelled guns, painted plumbing pipe bolted to wooden frames, those fuel depots with drums stacked and hoses run from pump stands. Half of those drums are empty. A few are just painted tops hammered onto crates. That airfield with fighters parked wingtip to wingtip. Some of them are real, yes. A few P-47s, a few twin-engine bombers. But a shocking number of those aircraft are literally fabric stretched over wood skeletons. From ground level, if you walk right up to them, it's obvious. From the sky, In a grainy black and white photo taken at high altitude by a recon plane moving fast, it looks perfect. And that's the audience. Let's talk about the recon problem for Germany. By 1944, it is dangerous for the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, to fly over England. Britain has radar. Britain has fighters. Britain has anti-aircraft guns. So German reconnaissance flights tend to be high, fast, and quick. You're not hovering. You're getting in, snapping a few frames, and getting out. That means detail gets lost. Distance smears things. Shadows matter. And now that we understand that, you start to see why the decoy crews in southeast England pay almost obsessive attention to detail. They don't just plop down fake tanks in an empty field. They drive trucks in loops and zigzags to leave tire tracks in the dirt. They lay down canvas tarps that look like oil stains. They build fake repair yards with tracks, wheels, and sprockets lying around to suggest maintenance in progress. They hang laundry. Yes, laundry. Soldiers hang laundry. Armies live in places. Armies leave trash. You are not just building equipment, you are painting a life. And with every one of those touches, you're telling German photo analysts, this is not a prop. This is where men are. Now, let's go inside the radio tent. It's canvas. It smells like canvas. Damp, warm, a little like rubber. You hear the low buzz of field radios, the clack of type, the murmur of controlled voices. These are not random chatterers. These are signal specialists. A corporal with headphones on is speaking in a clipped, tired voice. Red Fox 3 to quartermaster. Confirm convoy of fuel trucks delayed by mechanical. Request adjust offload window to 1800 hours. Over. He clicks off. He breathes. Then 30 seconds later, without even taking the headphones off, he becomes someone else. Now he's using a different call sign, a different rhythm. He's Dogwood Actual, complaining about rations. He's Able One, asking for spare parts. He's White King, confirming a movement order. He's faking being 3 different officers in 3 different battalion-level nets. They log everything. They stagger their timing. They imitate the unintentional quirks of real radio nets. Interruptions, repeats, garbled bits. Why? Because that's exactly the kind of traffic German signals intelligence expects to hear from an actual corps getting into final position for an invasion. This is radio theater, but it's not amateur radio theater. These guys have done their homework. They've studied how U.S. divisions talk over the air. They know how quartermasters complain. They know how artillery staff sound versus armor staff. They know what real tired sounds like, and they feed it to the enemy. Now put yourself in the enemy's chair. You're a German analyst in a dark room inside the Reich, in front of a table covered in transcripts and maps. Your job is to build an order of battle. Who's where, in what strength, with what support. For months, you've been getting reports from your agents in Britain, some of whom secretly work for the British, and they're all saying the same thing in different ways. There's a giant Allied strike force massing opposite the Pas de Calais. Patton is in charge. They're rehearsing a short crossing. Meanwhile, aerial reconnaissance photos show fake tanks, fake barracks, fake landing craft, fake fuel farms, and now your signals team is handing you radio intercepts that prove multiple armored and infantry divisions are sitting in southeast England, talking like they're days away from launching. That's 3 independent lanes of intel: HUMINT, human sources; IMINT, imagery intelligence; SIGINT, signals. And all 3 lanes are pointing to the exact same conclusion. Pas de Calais is going to get hit by Patton's army in force. From your side of the desk, that looks airtight. That's the brilliance. The Allies didn't just create noise. They created coherence. They shaped an illusion so layered that every piece reinforced every other piece. And once the Germans swallowed that story, it calcified. So now we move to the morning and afternoon of June 6, 1944. Normandy is in contact. Let's be very clear about what that looked like from the German side. You are a German corps commander in northern France. Your phone is screaming every 5 minutes. Every subordinate unit is calling you. Enemy airborne troops have dropped. We are under naval bombardment. They are landing on beaches in force. Request armor. Request armor now. You look at your map. You can see it forming. You've got Allied troops ashore at multiple beaches. They're pushing inland. In places, you've already lost key defensive positions. In your body, in your bones, in your experience, every instinct says, throw everything we have at this. Right now. Hit them now before they have time to organize. But you can't just move panzer divisions around France in 15 minutes. That's not how German command worked. There are political layers, personal layers, chains of authority, rivalries, egos, control of reserves. And above all, there is Hitler. By 1944, Hitler has centralized control over almost everything that matters, especially armored divisions in France. That means if you're a local German commander and you want to move a panzer division, really move it, commit it to a counterattack, you don't just do it, you ask. And ask means up the chain. And what's your chain been told for weeks? The main Allied blow will strike the Pas-de-Calais. Do not be drawn off too early by deception landings, so you call for armor. And the answer that comes down, at least in those early critical hours, is hold. Do not redeploy the strategic reserves. Normandy may be a diversion. We expect a larger invasion at Pas-de-Calais. Maintain position. That message, right there, buys the Allies' life. Let's say it plainly. One order, hold for the real invasion, protected Allied infantry who were face down in the sand at Omaha, getting cut apart. That's not theory. That's the math of minutes. Because armor is time. Look at it. A German panzer division that moves on June 6th before noon is going to be killing Americans and British troops in Normandy by the afternoon or evening of June 6th. A German panzer division that moves on June 7th arrives to find that Allied troops have already dug anti-tank positions, already linked beaches together, already gotten artillery ashore, already brought in more tanks of their own, already taken villages and crossroads. A German panzer division that moves on June 8th is now hitting not beach troops, but a forming front. Do you hear it? Every delay multiplies Allied survival. And that delay is not weather. It's not luck. It's not confusion on the beach. It is strategy. A fake army on the other side of the channel is holding real German armor in place. Let's sit in Hitler's headquarters for a second. Imagine the mood. Reports are flying in from France. Real, panicked, ugly reports. But Hitler is furious and also convinced he's right. He has been saying for months, the blow will come at Pas-de-Calais. The Allies will choose the shortest crossing. They will come where we are strongest. They will try to break us there. This is one of his "see, I'm a genius strategist" certainties. And when Normandy lands, in a place that is not Calais, Hitler's first instinct is not, I was wrong. Move everything. Hitler's first instinct is, this is the feint. The real blow is still coming where I predicted. Do not move. That mentality infects the German chain of command. Nobody in that system wants to be the guy who tells Hitler, actually, sir, Normandy is the main landing, and we should strip Pas-de-Calais right now. Because if you're wrong, you're finished. So even if some German officers are starting to suspect, this is it, this is the invasion, this is the main event, they still hesitate to say it out loud in those first critical hours. Because the safer political position is, we recommend holding reserves in Calais until the main Allied thrust there reveals itself. You can hear how that sentence protects careers. That's how a lie amplified fear. That's how fear amplified delay. That's how delay turned into Allied survival on those beaches. Now, let's walk back across the channel and look at the human cost of that survival. Picture a U.S. infantryman at Omaha Beach, June 6th. He's pinned down behind a sand berm, sucking in wet air and smoke. Someone else's blood in the surf soaking into his uniform, his ears ringing so hard he can't even hear his own breathing. He's waiting for one of two things. Either he dies right there, or somehow, the fire in front of him stops long enough for him to stand, run, and claw forward. He doesn't know anything about 1st U.S. Army Group. He doesn't know anything about inflatable tanks in Kent. He has never heard the word FUSAG. He just knows he is still alive in this second, and in the next second he might not be. Now freeze that image and zoom way out. Because in a quiet tent in southeast England, a sergeant is sitting with a radio headset on, faking a conversation about fuel allotments for Patton's imaginary divisions, and that little fake conversation is one pebble in a landslide of false signals that is convincing Berlin not to send full-strength armored counterattack into the exact man on that beach. So here's the ugly, beautiful truth. A corporal in England pretending to be a quartermaster for an army that doesn't exist is saving the life of a private in France who has never heard his name. That's what coordinated deception does. That's the scale. Now let's watch what happens next. By June 7th, 8th, 9th, days 2, 3, 4, the Normandy beachhead is no longer just individual breakout points. It's linking. American forces from Utah Beach are pushing inland and turning west to seal off the Cotentin Peninsula. British and Canadian forces are pressing toward Caen. Supply pipelines are flowing. Tons and tons of ammunition, fuel, vehicles are now coming ashore over those beaches. Engineers are laying down temporary harbors, floating piers, causeways. Whole artificial ports are being anchored into place to unload faster. This is where the battle turns from can we land to can we stay? And because the Germans held back their best armored units in those first irreplaceable hours, because they were still guarding against Patton's Phantom Army at the Pas de Calais, the Allies answer that question, yes, we can stay. And once the answer is yes, there's no one saying it. That is when the clock starts running not in hours, but in inevitability. Because from that moment on, the Allies are not trying to break into France. They're already in. Now they're spreading. And that spread over the next weeks and months will crack German lines, liberate Paris, open up the drive across France, and ultimately push into Germany itself. But the hinge of that, the moment between maybe we get shoved back into the channel and Germany is now doomed in the West, is the delay. And the delay came from a lie. Let me say something else here that we don't always like to say out loud. This wasn't just clever, it was ruthless. The people who planned this deception understood exactly what they were doing and exactly what it would cost the enemy. They were not just saving their own troops, they were shaping where the Germans would die. If German panzer divisions had been allowed to rush to Normandy instantly, yes, Allied casualties skyrocket. Maybe the landing fails, but also those panzer divisions would have been committed early, right there, and destroyed there. By freezing those panzer divisions in place, by keeping them tethered to Pas de Calais, by making them wait for a fake invasion that never comes, the Allies forced the German High Command to waste its most powerful reserve force at the wrong moment. And once the Germans finally face reality, Normandy is the main invasion, we have to move. It's too late to deliver the decisive counterblow that might have pushed the Allies back. That's not an accident. That's the win condition. Can you feel how cold-blooded that is? This is not cartoon war. This is math, ego, psychology, timing, and nerve. Now, I want you to hear one specific conversation. Obviously, we don't have microphones in Hitler's headquarters. We don't get tape. But we do have accounts written later by German officers who lived through those 48 hours. Here's the shape of it. A report comes in. Mass landings in Normandy. Multiple beaches. Paratroopers inland. Hitler is briefed. His first reaction is basically, this is not the main operation. The main operation is still to come in the Pas de Calais. Hold the reserves for the decisive blow. And down the chain, that becomes, do not yet commit the Calais panzer divisions south. Even when field commanders are screaming, this is the decisive blow, we need armor now, they're told, wait. The Führer expects the main assault in Calais. That is not just a military mistake, that is Allied deception doing its job. Because remember, why does Hitler believe Pas de Calais is the real target? Because for weeks, maybe months, the Allies have been feeding him imagery, signals, and human intel that says exactly that. We're about to land in Calais. We're massing there. Patton's in charge. Get ready, any moment now. So on June 6th, June 7th, June 8th, when he's forced to choose between A, believe what your eyes are telling you right now in Normandy, or B, believe what your spies, your analysts, your photographs, and your pride have been telling you for weeks about Calais, he chooses B. He chooses the lie. That choice, right there, locks in his defeat in France. You can draw a straight, hard line. First U.S. Army Group. Hitler holds Armor. Armor doesn't hit Normandy in time. Allies survive Normandy. Bridgehead holds. France falls. Germany loses the West. That's the chain. We talk a lot. When we talk about D-Day, about courage, the guys in the landing craft, the medics on the beach, the engineers clearing mines under fire, and we should. That courage is real. But we also have to talk about this other thing that doesn't get posters and doesn't get statues. Weaponized deception, staff officers, signal specialists, counterintelligence case handlers, radio actors, canvas tank crews, people who never fired a shot that day and still helped break the back of Nazi Europe. Now let's walk out of the heat of June 1944 and look at the aftermath. Because after it worked, after Normandy held, after the Allies pushed off the beaches and began carving their way inland, there was a temptation to quietly file the deception work under black stuff and never talk about it. A lot of it stayed secret for decades. Some of the physical stuff, though, lingered. There are photos, real photos, of inflatable Sherman tanks sitting in English fields like party decorations from the end of the world. There are pictures of wooden fighter planes parked wingtip to wingtip, painted just well enough to fool a man looking down from too high and too fast. There are shots of Patton walking an inspection line in southeast England, visiting troops, making himself seen, hands behind his back, that famous jaw set like it's chewing on nails. Do you get how surgical that was? Patton himself was used as bait. The Germans respected him, even feared him. They saw him as the Allies' most dangerous, fast-moving field commander. So the Allies put him in England, very visibly, in charge of the fake army. To Berlin, that was like a neon sign. That's the hammer. Watch him, he'll lead the real blow. Meanwhile, the real blow, the one that would actually tear open Fortress Europe, was being led in Normandy by other generals. Patton still plays his role, with total commitment. He knows he's the decoy. He knows he's the phantom fist that never swings. He does it anyway. That's ego weaponized against ego, and it works. So let's close this. When you hear D-Day was the largest amphibious invasion in history, that's true. When you hear the bravery on those beaches changed the war, that's true. But here's the part we don't always say out loud. D-Day was not just boats and bullets, it was also forgery, theater, acting, and psychological manipulation at continental scale. The Allies didn't just invade France, they invaded German decision-making. They got inside the head of the German High Command, rewired its expectations, and then made sure that, when the decisive moment came, German commanders could not act fast enough in the right direction. They made the enemy stare at the wrong door while they came through the real one. They built an army out of air, an army of rubber tanks, empty warehouses, scripted radio chatter, staged photographs, forged memos, double agents, and one loud, famously aggressive American general walking around like a spotlight. And that army, that fake army, held back real Panzer divisions long enough for real American, British, Canadian, Free French, and Allied troops to punch into Normandy and stay there. That bought time. That time became ground. That ground became a front. That front became the fall of Nazi Europe in the West. If you're looking for the moment Hitler began to truly lose the war on the Western Front, circle it in red, June 6, 1944, not just on the beaches but in his own mind, when he believed the lie longer than he could afford to. In the end, here is the brutal little lesson. Sometimes the most lethal weapon in the world is a thing you never had. Sometimes the division that saves you is canvas. Sometimes the man who never actually attacks you is the one who beats you. And sometimes the deadliest blow in a world war is the one you're still waiting for when the real one has already landed. That's how a fake army, the first U.S. Army Group, helped crack open Hitler's Europe. Not by firing, not by advancing, but by making the enemy hesitate. And in war, hesitation kills. That's the story.